Hey, Allison Verhalen here, and today I want to talk to you about spring cleaning your website. So spring has officially sprung, at least here in Chicago it has. It is warmer, it is rainy, it is everything that spring brings along with it, and a lot of people are looking to deep clean their homes, maybe their offices if they're letting employees come back into the office. But are you spring cleaning your website? When was the last time you really did a deep clean of your website? Just like a home or an office can attract dirt and bugs if it's not cleaned regularly. A website can also attract digital dirt and bugs in the form of broken links and lower search engine ranking positions. So you really need to stay on top of this. Ideally, you should be doing this kind of thing 3 or 4 times a year. Once a quarter is pretty good. But if you haven't done it in a while, if you haven't done it since the new year, if you haven't done it ever, now is a really good time to take another look at your website and just go through and clean it out and make sure that it's up to date and doing everything you need it to do. So number one is check for broken links. Not only is that bad for SEO, but it's also a bad user experience. If they're on your website and they click on something and it goes to nothing or it goes to a different website altogether and it's not really where you wanted to lead them, that's going to reflect badly on you. So go through, make sure you don't have any broken links. If you have a ton of content with a ton of links, don't worry, you don't have to do this manually. There are software that can do this for you. So Screaming Frog, I think, is the most popular one that people tend to use to go through and search for broken links, but there are a bunch of other tools out there that can do this for you. So you can just set that to go while you go eat lunch or check your email or do whatever else it is you need to do. And then it'll tell you what links are broken and you can go in and fix them. So absolutely fix all your broken links, because that is super annoying as a user to come across that, and you don't ever want to annoy your users because it is so easy for them to just click away and find what they need somewhere else. So number two is check your analytics. When was the last time? Obviously you should have Google Analytics or something like it to keep track of the traffic coming to your website, how much traffic you're getting, where they're coming from, what keywords they're using to find you, which pages and blog posts they're visiting, how long they're sticking around. All of that you need to keep track of. So you should at least touch base with your analytics at least once a month, if not more. But if it's been a while, take a deep dive into your analytics. Don't just look at it, but really look at all of the data, because Google Analytics really gives you a lot of data. So really dive deep into it and look at what is on your website that's working and what's not working so well. So that leads nicely into my next point, which is consider deleting underperforming content. So I always talk about, if you're going to republish content that hasn't been published in a while, you can edit it, you can do new stuff with it and then republish it. Google treats it just like brand new content. Your users love it. You can put a little thing at the top saying, this was originally published on this date. I recently re-edited it and I'm publishing it here on this date. Enjoy, right? So people love that because sometimes they need a refresher on that topic. And especially if it's a topic that was previously popular, that shows there's a demand for it. So there might still be a demand for it. So by republishing it, you can kind of give new life to that content. And thereby your website, you drive more traffic to that content and to your website. It's a win. So the question then becomes, what do you do with your underperforming content, the content that is not getting a lot of traffic? Should you just delete it? There's a debate among content strategists about this. Some people do go and delete their underperforming content. They swear by it. It takes a lot of time, especially if you have a lot of content, to sort through the stuff that's not getting a lot of traffic, what should be deleted, what shouldn't. It's very time consuming, but they swear by it, and other people don't do it and they say it's fine. It doesn't really hurt your SEO, assuming you're not cannibalizing keywords. If you wrote a blog post at one point that was focusing on one particular keyword, and then you wrote a different blog post that focused on a different keyword, and maybe that one did a little bit better, it might be doing better, but it might also be getting cannibalized by that other older post. So maybe it could perform even better if you delete that older post. So that way they're not fighting to rank for the same keywords. So that's really the only situation in which I would say you should go through and delete underperforming content. That, or if you've recently been through a brand refresh and the older content just doesn't reflect your brand anymore. If you have started offering new services, or you stopped offering certain services and you covered topics on stuff that you don't do for your clients anymore, or products that you don't sell anymore, then maybe it does make sense to go through and delete them. So always consider, like I said, it's not really going to hurt your SEO unless there's keyword cannibalization, but for the most part, it's not going to hurt your SEO to keep that content up there, even if it is underperforming and not getting a whole lot of traffic. But consider the user experience. Is this content that you still want your potential customers to see? Is it still going to help engage them and drive them through the buyer journey, help lead them to the next step of the buyer journey so eventually they become customers? If the answer is no, then go ahead and delete it. But if you think it's still solid content, you absolutely can try to republish it and see if that gives it new life and drives more traffic to it. Maybe it just didn't do well initially because your site was newer and Google hadn't had a lot of time to index your website and you didn't have the domain authority that you have now. It's always worth a shot to republish it, but you can delete it too. Like I said, the data I don't think shows that there's a whole lot of benefit to deleting it or to letting it stay. But like I said, if you have a lot of content and you want to pick through and see what's underperforming and what should be deleted and go through and delete all those underperforming content, and you have a ton of content on your website, that can be really time consuming. Maybe your time is better spent doing something else. And like I said, there's a debate among content strategists, even us professionals argue about these things. So it's up to you to look at the data and come to your own conclusions. So next up is visit your website from different devices and different browsers. Hopefully you're already visiting your website on a regular basis just to make sure it looks good, make sure it loads okay. That is always super important, but you probably always visit it from one, maybe two devices. Hopefully you're always checking to make sure it works and looks good on mobile, because that is super important because people are increasingly using their mobile devices. So always check it on mobile and on desktop, but also, like I said, try different browsers. If you normally use a PC, try a MacBook. If you have an iPhone, try looking at it on an Android. If you have a team of people and some people on your team have different devices, this can be super useful for you because you can get all of them together with their different devices and check your website on all of their different devices and make sure it looks good on those devices. And it works and it loads properly and it's easy to navigate. Again, it's all about the user experience, and how that website appears on all of the devices is super important to the user experience. So always, always, always keep that in mind. So next up is check your images. Do they have the correct alt tags? Do they all have alt tags or the right file names or descriptions or captions? Your images don't need to have captions, but if that's something you want for your users, if it helps to explain what's going on in the photo or the graph or the chart or whatever it is that you've posted, obviously always keep that up to date. If you put a placeholder image somewhere and forgot to update it with a higher quality image, that is absolutely something you want to do right away. Go ahead and replace it with a higher quality image, because again, you always want that user experience to be very high. You always want that high quality content, including high quality images. So that's next up. And the next thing is updating your content tags. Do they still make sense? Are they still the keywords that you're trying to target for this particular piece of content? Categories, always keep your categories up to date. I tend to separate my categories based on the products and services that I offer. So if you offer new products or services, or if you don't offer certain products or services or both, then it might be time to recategorize some content. So that's a pretty basic SEO thing that can be pretty quick and easy to go through and just make sure everything is in the right category and has the right tags associated with it, because that's really going to impact whether it shows up in searches and which searches it shows up in. So finally, last but not least, is you are going to update your usernames and passwords. You should be doing this regularly anyway. Experts say you need to update your password every 3 months. Absolutely do that at least every 3 months. I recently got an alert from my website that someone was trying to log in, and the username they tried to use was actually a password that I use for a lot of different stuff. It was not the password I use for my website, but it is a password I use in a lot of other different places. And I was like, oh, it's past time to update that. So I had to spend an hour going through and updating a bunch of my passwords. So always, always, always keep that up to date and change it regularly. And also, if you have team members that you give access to your website and maybe they went on to do other things and they should no longer have access to your website, but you never updated the usernames or passwords, now is a good time to do that, just to make sure that they don't have access or someone can't use them to get access to your website. So always, 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 cybersecurity is super important. So absolutely keep track of your website and those usernames and passwords, because if your website is compromised, you're screwed. So that's it. Those are my tips for this week. If you have any other questions, you can find me at avwritingservices.com. I have a whole bunch of content on this and other content marketing tips and tricks. If you have any other questions and you want to reach me directly, you can do so at info@avwritingservices.com. That's it. Have a great week and happy blogging.